The police told us later that if even one more person had tried to run out of that house, there would have been more bodies on the floor. I was 21 years old when this happened, and up until that night, Halloween had always meant the same thing to me. Loud music, stupid costumes, and pretending we weren't afraid of anything. That year, someone had the brilliant idea to rent a farmhouse just outside town. No neighbours, no streetlights, just trees, empty road, and a house far enough away that nobody would complain. By the time I got there, it was already packed. People I didn't recognise, people I barely knew, people I definitely didn't trust, but that didn't matter. It was Halloween. Everyone showed up. The house was decorated wall to wall. Fake blood, plastic skeletons, fog machines filling the hallway so thick you could barely see your feet. Music was blasting so loud the floor vibrated. It felt reckless in the fun way, at least at first. Around midnight, I was in the kitchen grabbing another drink when the lights flickered. Just for a second. Then everything went dark. The music cut out instantly. At first, people laughed. Some even cheered, thinking it was part of the party, like someone planned it. Phones came out, flashlights turned on. The room filled with that nervous, excited chatter people get when something unexpected happens. Then someone screamed. Not a playful scream, not a drunk scream, a real one. It came from the front of the house, and then we heard it. 3 slow, heavy knocks on the front door. Not banging, not pounding, just deliberate. Someone yelled, "Who is it?" No answer. Another knock. This one louder. A guy near the door, I think his name was Eric, reached for the handle before anyone could stop him. He cracked the door open just an inch, and then he slammed it shut so hard it rattled the frame. When he turned around, I knew something was wrong. His face had drained of colour. His hands were shaking. He said, "There are men outside." Nobody laughed this time. He said they were wearing masks, not costumes, real masks, plain, dark, no expression, and they were asking who owned the house. Someone tried to joke about it being a prank. That's when we heard footsteps, not inside, outside, moving around the house. Flashlights swept past the windows, beams cutting through the fog machines still leaking out from inside. Someone tried to turn the music back on. It didn't work. Another voice came from outside, calm, almost friendly. "We know you're having a party. We just want to come in and talk." That sentence sent a chill through the room. Nobody talks like that unless they already know what they're doing. A window shattered on the far side of the house. Glass hit the floor. People started panicking. Someone yelled to run. Someone else screamed to hide. A few people rushed upstairs. Others locked themselves in bathrooms. I dropped behind a couch with 2 strangers and held my breath like I was underwater. Then the front door gave way. The sound of it breaking was loud enough to make my ears ring. Heavy boots hit the floor, slow steps, deliberate steps. I could see their shadows moving across the walls as their flashlights scanned the room. One of them laughed. I will never forget that laugh. Not because it was loud, but because it sounded relaxed, like he was enjoying himself. They didn't start stealing things. They didn't yell. They just walked through the house, calmly asking the same question. Who rented the house? Nobody answered. They asked again. Finally, someone pointed upstairs. That's when everything stopped feeling like a party and started feeling like a mistake we couldn't undo. They went upstairs. We heard doors opening, someone crying, someone begging, then footsteps coming back down. They had him, the guy who rented the place. They dragged him outside. We could hear everything through the broken door, arguing, shouting, one of the masked men telling him he should have known better. Then a single gunshot. Silence. No screaming, no chaos, just quiet. Minutes passed that felt like hours. Eventually, we heard footsteps leaving. A car engine started. Tires on gravel. Nobody moved until the sound faded completely. When the police arrived, the guy who rented the house was still alive. The gunshot had hit the dirt near his feet, close enough to make the point. The masked men were never caught, and 2 weeks later, that farmhouse burnt down. To this day, I don't know if it was related, but I know one thing for sure, that wasn't a prank, and that wasn't random. We were never supposed to leave that party. If I had looked through the peephole instead of opening the door, I wouldn't still be wondering how close I came to disappearing that night. I was living alone when this happened. First apartment. First Halloween on my own. No roommates, no pets, just me, a couch, and a cheap TV playing old horror movies in the background. By the time midnight rolled around, the streets outside were dead quiet. No kids, no cars, no music. Halloween was basically over. That's why the knock made my stomach drop. 3 soft taps on my front door. I froze. I didn't get up right away. I just sat there, listening, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe someone had the wrong apartment. Maybe it was drunk neighbours messing around. Then the knock came again. Same rhythm, same pressure. Not aggressive, not playful, intentional. I walked to the door slowly and looked through the peephole. Nothing. The hallway light was on, but the space directly in front of my door was empty. I should have stopped there. I didn't. I unlocked the door and pulled it open. No one was there. I stood in the doorway for a second, feeling stupid, when I noticed something that made my skin crawl. I could hear breathing, not echoing in the hallway, right behind me. I slammed the door shut and locked it so fast my hands were shaking. I stood there listening. Nothing. No footsteps, no voices, just silence. I told myself I was tired, that my brain was playing tricks on me because I'd been watching horror movies all night. I went back to the couch. 10 minutes later, the knock came again, this time louder. I didn't answer. Another knock followed immediately, then a voice. Police, open up. My heart started racing. I hadn't done anything wrong, but something about the way he said it felt off. No badge announcement, no name, just police. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the hallway camera feed on the apartment app. The screen froze. That's when I heard something else. Metal scraping against my door, like someone was testing the lock. I yelled that I was calling the police. The scraping stopped. Silence again. I didn't sleep that night. Around 3 a.m, I heard footsteps outside my bedroom door. Slow, dragging. I held my breath and stared at the handle, waiting for it to turn. It never did. The next morning I called the actual police. They told me something that made my blood run cold. Someone had been reported impersonating an officer in my building. Same night, same description. When they checked my door, they found scratch marks near the lock. If I had opened it the second time, I wouldn't be telling this story. He didn't just wave at us while we were trick-or-treating. He smiled and said my name, even though I had never seen him before. This happened when I was 15. The last year my friends and I still went trick-or-treating without feeling embarrassed about it. There were 5 of us. Same group every year, same neighbourhood. It was one of those Halloween nights that felt perfect. Cold air, fog rolling in, porches lit up with orange lights and jack-o'-lanterns everywhere. The streets were full of kids and parents, so none of us felt unsafe. At least, not at first. We were halfway through the neighbourhood when we noticed him. A tall man standing at the corner of the street. He was wearing a plain black jacket and a white mask. No design, no expression, just eye holes and a mouth slit. We assumed he was another adult in costume. He lifted his hand and waved. We waved back without thinking. Then he said, "Have fun tonight, Ethan." I stopped walking. I turned around and stared at him. I hadn't said my name. None of my friends had. I laughed it off, assuming maybe he knew my parents or something. But then he looked at the rest of us. "Don't stay out too late, Marcus. Your mom will worry, Jazz. Careful crossing the street, Tyler." Every single name. The smiles disappeared fast. Marcus asked if we knew him. Nobody did. We kept walking, trying to convince ourselves it was just a coincidence. 2 streets later, we saw him again. Same mask, same clothes, standing under a streetlight. He didn't wave this time, he just watched us. Jess whispered that maybe he was following us. We crossed the street. So did he. That's when fear kicked in. We started cutting through yards, skipping houses, trying to lose him. But every few minutes, there he was, always ahead of us, always waiting. At one point he spoke again. "Your dad works late tonight, Ethan." I felt my chest tighten. That wasn't something strangers knew. We ran, straight back toward my house. When we reached my block, the man was already there, standing across the street from my driveway. He tilted his head like he was amused. "You should go inside," he said. "You've had enough candy." We bolted inside and slammed the door. My parents called the police immediately. They searched the area, but didn't find anyone. That should have been the end. It wasn't. A week later, the police knocked on our door again. They had found an abandoned house 2 blocks away. Inside were photos, pictures of us, walking to school, riding bikes, standing on my porch, all taken weeks before Halloween. The man had been watching us, learning our names, waiting. My 6-year-old asked me why I was calling her name from the hallway, while I was sitting right next to her on the couch. I've never been someone who scares easily. I'm a single parent. You don't get that luxury. You learn to stay calm, to think logically, to push fear down because someone depends on you. That's what I told myself that night. It was Halloween, and my daughter and I had just gotten home from trick-or-treating. She was still in a costume, dumping candy onto the living room floor, sorting it into piles like she always did. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. She suddenly looked up at me and said, "Why did you call me?" I laughed and told her I didn't. She frowned. "You did, from the hallway." I felt that tight feeling in my chest, the one you get when something doesn't make sense. I asked her what she heard. She said it was my voice, saying her name, slowly. I checked the hallway. Empty. Every door was locked. Every window closed. I told her it was probably just noise from outside, even though I knew that wasn't true. We sat back down. 5 minutes later, she grabbed my arm. There it is again. This time I heard it too. My voice, calling her name, from inside the apartment. But it wasn't coming from me. It was coming from the hallway closet. I stood up and walked toward it. The voice stopped immediately. Inside the closet was nothing unusual. Coats, shoes, cleaning supplies. But the air felt wrong, heavy. That night, I put her to bed early and slept on the floor beside her. Around 2 a.m, I heard whispering, repeating words, practicing. The police later found a crawl space behind the closet. Someone had been living there, recording us, learning our voices. The employee grabbed my arm and said something that made my stomach drop. That man you're describing doesn't work here. I've been to a lot of haunted houses. You know the type. Loud noises, fake chainsaws, actors jumping out at you and laughing when you scream. That's why I wasn't scared at first. It was Halloween weekend and my friends and I decided to check out a haunted attraction that had just opened on the edge of town. It was advertised as one of the scariest experiences in the area, with multiple buildings and actors who stayed in character the entire time. The place was packed. Fog machines covered the parking lot, red lights flashed, speakers played distorted screams and whispers on a loop. Everything felt normal, until we went inside. About halfway through the first building, I noticed someone walking behind us. Tall, dark clothes, no mask. That alone was strange. Everyone else was in full costume. I assumed he was an actor trying something different. As we turned a corner, he leaned in close and whispered my friend's name. Not a nickname, her real name. She froze. We laughed nervously, thinking it was part of the act. But then he whispered another name, then mine. I asked him where he worked. He didn't answer, he just smiled. The deeper we went, the closer he stayed. Too close, sometimes brushing past us. Once his hand touched my shoulder, not playfully, not like an actor, it felt deliberate. When we finally reached the exit, we rushed straight to the staff. I described him. The employee's face changed instantly. She asked me to repeat it. Then she said the words I'll never forget. That man doesn't work here. Security reviewed the footage. They saw him enter, they never saw him leave. To this day, the attraction won't talk about it, and I don't go to haunted houses anymore.